fans? Welcome back to 1237, back with another review. And this is probably going to be the last extreme film that I'm going to do for a while, or at least part of the extreme kind of marathon that I was doing. There is one other one I'm waiting on. It's been on back order, so I don't know when the hell it's going to get here. But for now, this is probably going to be the last one. I might do some more here and there throughout, but as far as connecting to that marathon, this is probably the last one, at least until that other one comes in. And then I'll go on to sort of my run of A24 films. But this is a movie that I've known about for a while and have wanted to see for quite a while. I can't remember exactly when or where I heard of it, or what movie I saw that it was kind of compared to. But I know it was as far back as when I was in the apartment. And I heard that it was this kind of extreme, wild, surreal, uh, crazy, brutal, I don't know what to say, artsy horror film, but it's definitely surreal. It definitely plays out like a dream. In fact, the whole movie is built on what's called fear logic or dream logic, and it definitely plays out like a dream or a nightmare. Probably one of the best I've seen in a while. It's also a film from Turkey, which I don't think I've reviewed any films from Turkey. I think a lot of people think of like Turkish knockoff films, but and this is just like a straight up original film with a lot of influences that do shine right through into this. But yeah, this is a wild film, pretty much depicting hell in a very awesome and creepy way. And that's the 2015 Turkish film Baskin, which was based on a short film of the same name, I think by the same director. Even some of the same actors were in it. Can Evernall, if I pronounce that correctly. I'm probably going to butcher all these names, so forgive me. Written by Can Everall, Kem Ozuduru, Erkin Sadakoglu, Aaron Ake. Uh, Alp Korfali did the cinematography, which this movie looks gorgeous. And the music was done by JF, uh, or Ulyss Pakan and Vulcan Akalp. Again, I apologize for all those names. The music goes a lot in between this sort of very somber Silent Hill kind of to sort of kind of dancey, dubsteppy type sounds. But it all works in whatever scene it's in. I guess this was made for like the equivalent of $350,000, and this movie looks so sleek and just so. It looks amazing, even when it gets really like a visually surreal, because the non-linear narrative is already quite surreal, but even with some of the visuals become more surreal, it looks awesome. Like there's a scene where a guy's underwater and it looks like this giant hand slow motion coming in to grab him. It it looks great. I mean, visually this is a very well made film. Uh I guess the character of the father, which is actually the guy on this cover, he was a first time actor. Now I get to butcher his name. Um, this was Evernall's directorial debut, so I get another wild debut. I mean, I, I'll check out whatever films this guy does based on that. Uh, Mehmet Karaoglu, who plays the father, his performance was excellent. He was a first time actor. He has some super rare skin condition that gives him the appearance that he has, which really works for this film. Now, I don't want to give too much away, but there are a lot of really good selling points to the film, which I did read that the director was very influenced by Fulci and Clive Barker, and that is incredibly evident in this. There's a lot of Fulci, especially with the whole nightmare logic type of narrative, which by that it just means things happen for no reason. Like things can just happen. A a guy's walking down a creepy hallway, goes in through a door, then he's in his childhood home. Or you know, just as something is about to get really extreme, like he closes his eyes and when he opens them, he's back in the diner from earlier, but they're having a conversation about what's going on elsewhere. So the whole logic idea that just anything can happen and that it can kind of take you in any direction and it's not supposed to make sense. Like this is not a movie you're not supposed to watch literally or take super literally. If there are any kind of like, hidden meanings or messages or anything like that, uh, really the only one that I got might have been, well, I'll say that for spoilers, might have something to do with this keyhole. That's all I'm going to say before spoilers. Um, might either be rooted in, like, sort of Turkey itself or religion itself, which the fact that this came out of Turkey is pretty wild because that's a very, you know, super religious, super strict uh, type of country. Their climate might have seen this as pretty. You know, wouldn't be surprised if there was quite the stigma around this film, but so yeah, a lot of Fulci. Even some of the visuals, like a part where a tarantula comes out of a guy's mouth, is very much like The Beyond. Uh, even just the gore itself is very Fulci. A bit more brutal and quicker than Fulci, because Fulci likes to hold on the gore and really get to the gross out point. This is quicker but more brutal and visceral. Uh, I'll say. Clive Barker. I mean, it's definitely like a Hellraiser inspired film. I mean, there's chains, a lot of just how these hell figures look. They all seem to have what looks like black trash bag kind of wrapped around their head with barbed wire around it. Some people are like sewn together in very suggestive positions. Uh, or people are just covered in chains with padlocks. It has a very Hellraiser type feel to it, and it's very evident when you watch. I know a lot of people will say if you can tell what a movie was inspired by, then it's a ripoff. But I think if it's done well, it's kind of a love letter, and I could see this as a love letter to Fulci and Clive Barker. I also kind of got some Silent Hill uh, thoughts while watching it. I don't know if Silent Hill was an inspiration, but even like before they wander into hell, just the look of it, like when they're at the diner, just like this thick, thick fog, where the street lights are just like you can just tell there's color light there because the fog is so thick. Nighttime, it just looks like the road just disappears into fog. A couple of these hell figures are like these women who are like back to at like this butcher table, or it almost kind of looks like they're frozen until there's like a noise and they turn around and they scream and come at the character. It kind of reminded me of the nurses. So a little bit of Silent Hill, and yeah, just throughout the film, we just kind of it cuts to not necessarily flashbacks, but sort of our lead just kind of jumping around like you would in a dream, like to the diner at the beginning or his childhood home. And it's a pretty wild ride, and it's very fast paced. I mean, it's 97 minutes, but it goes by very quick. Some people might have a problem with the very ending of the film. I thought it worked for me because it did give this sense of just. I can't really say that yet, but The story is basically you have these 5 officers in Turkey who they're sitting around a diner, kind of having the Reservoir Dogs conversation, sharing sex stories. They get a call to this one area that's kind of known for strange rumors and just strange things happening. So they go, but they crash their van. Even also like Silent Hill, they see someone out in the road. They hit them, but they swerve, and go into the lake, and then they're on foot. They're trying to find their way. They come to this old abandoned building, which I guess is like a Ottoman era police station. And the further they go into the building, like this building, I guess is like a gate to hell. And they wander into it, and they just go through like all these layers of hell until eventually there's some sort of trial, kind of at the end. There are a lot of different kind of symbols for hell in this film than what we would typically see here in the West. Like, we might have flies or snakes and serpents. Here, it's kind of based more on the plagues. Like, there's images of frogs. Uh, so, just a different kind of imagery surrounding hell or damnation, which I thought was very interesting. That's as much as I can give away about the plot. Um, but yeah, we followed this one character. I think his name was Arda. He's kind of like the young officer. Yeah, Gorkum Kasal. Uh, and pretty much throughout each kind of thing that's going on, he'll find himself back at the diner talking to his boss, and they're always talking about what's going on right now, almost like it's kind of a side conversation. So it really plays on your mind, like, is this in his head? Is this really happening? Is what's going on at the building and the hellscape, is that really happening? Are they still at the diner? It really plays on your expectations or your thoughts. And there's just a lot of really creepy imagery. I mean, I didn't really notice it at first, but there's like a figure in black hidden somewhere in the background throughout pretty much the whole film. And then just when the officers get to the building and they realize they're kind of that something's not right, they start seeing like the trash bag wrapped head people with barbed wire, and the way that they're all just like crawling after them in this dark building, it very creepy, very well done. And yeah, you can probably see there's a bit of Argento as well, because then when they really get down to where the father is, there is some crazy color lighting. But that's kind of all I can say before spoilers. But I really enjoyed this film. I mean, I loved how surreal it was, uh, especially with the fact that it didn't care that its logic isn't, that it's going with this sort of dream logic where it plays by its own rules, and didn't worry about it being confusing or maybe not having to put explanations through everything and just portraying it as it wanted to be portrayed. The the whole imagery and symbols of hell, having it be very different, and even if the sort of hell figures within this scape are reminiscent of Silent Hill or Hellraiser, it still original enough to stay, to hold its own, but it feels more like a love letter to anything else than it does a ripoff. It definitely feels like a love letter. So if you're able to find this, definitely check it out. Uh, I very much enjoyed it. So that's Baskin, and now I'm going to get into spoilers. So when they get down to this room, that's when the father comes out. You know, he's this a hooded figure, really short guy. You know, he's got the skin condition. Uh, he he goes around to like each of the five officers who are all tied to posts or whatever. And he's got like this one helper with like hay hair who's kind of doing a lot of type acting. It, they kill three of them, and then it's just the boss and the lead. Which every time the lead goes back to the diner, it's the boss that he keeps talking to, and he goes back to the diner a few times. Like one is right after they crash the van, so like they're sitting there at the table, and it looks like water's coming out from under his hand on the table, and then there's a shot kind of underneath the table where it looks like water's just running off the edge of it. And then it's like he snaps out of it and he's underwater. And we get that great wide shot of him underwater. It looks like the hands coming in to grab him. And then he goes there a couple other times. The one character that's kind of put on trial, and there are some great lines in this, like the father says, "Hell is not a place you go. Hell is something you carry with you forever." So kind of saying like this isn't really a like they did cross through a gate, even though there is the line how it's great when doors open and realms unite. But with that, hell is something you carry with you. It's like almost kind of like guilt or something, or sin is something that you carry with you. So almost making it sound like they didn't wander into hell or they didn't arrive there. It's just something that they've always had, that they've always carried with them. And so he goes up to this one guy who, he was telling these sex stories back at the diner. He tried to intimidate a young waiter with the Goodfellas, how am I funny conversation, which, yes, was probably portrayed more the realistic way that inspired Joe Pesci to do it, as it was a diner. He was a waiter. So, like, the father, like, stabs his eyes. And then we get this one part where his helper has, like, this long chain going into darkness. And the camera just zooms in on this darkness. Then we just see this, like, goat head come, like, fleshy goat head. And then shoulders of someone, like, crawling. It is a slow reveal. Because after that, we cut to, like, behind a sheet. Where it's the silhouette of this thing crawling. Appears to be a woman with just, like, a fleshy goat skull. And they're trying to force the guy that just had his eye stabbed out to have sex with her. Which there's, like, an orgy of these trash bag barbed wire head people behind him watching. Which is sometimes they're all standing, like, kneeling around this sort of thing, kind of doing this ape bounce in unison, which is kind of creepy. But it looks like these sexual positions where, giving, taking, and they're, like, sewn together. And, like, earlier when the officers were ending up in different rooms, seeing different things, that was showing. There's like an orgy room where that was going on. They're all covered in blood. They're like sewn together. Pretty wild. But the guy's unable to do it. And then he just like falls over and dies. And a tarantula comes out of his mouth, which is very Fulci. And then he goes over, he kills the boss, which sends the lead back to the diner. Now, the only kind of symbolism I could kind of pick out, like, hey, that probably means something, but is it related strictly to Turkey or a religion that I'm not familiar with enough to kind of decipher what they're trying to say? Because to me, the whole movie just seems like, these five guys that wandered into hell, unbeknownst to them, just told in a non-linear, dreamlike way. But it's revealed that the boss, I guess, raised uh, the Arda character, and the boy in the very beginning, the opening, who the young boy goes to the kitchen for a drink or a snack, hears sexual noises coming from his mom's room, and thinks something's coming after him, and then he's trying to get in his mom's room, and this hand just comes out. Revealed that's, Arda was that young boy. The boss kind of raised him. And saying how, I promised your uncle that nothing would ever happen to you. And, I have one key in life, and now I give that key to you. And since he had his throat slit, when he goes like this, it reveals that his throat is slit, because this is still in the diner. He got his throat slit in the building, but then when they're back in the diner, and then Arda pulls a key out. That to me says the key is his ability or responsibility to protect Arda. So now, like, he's given him what it takes to defeat the father. So he takes the key, and the father has like a keyhole tattoo on his forehead. So he just jams it into his forehead. He dies. He makes it out of the building. And then he's just running down the road, slow motion, cameras kind of going like this, kind of laughing maniacally. And then when a car comes, he goes to flag him down. He gets hit, run over, and killed, only to find out that the car that ran him over is the police van. And then they swerve, go into the lake, sort of creating this endless loop, this endless hellish loop. I mean, we've seen movies kind of depicting hell that have done that before. Even a couple of the later Hellraiser films did that. I think 5 and 6 did that. That worked for me. Kind of creating this endless loop with no memory, probably no real way to stop it. I'm guessing they died in that crash, and that's how they got into hell. That I'm not entirely sure about. Which even then, that's kind of like Silent Hill, or at least the movie Silent Hill. They hit a rock or a tree. They crash, hit their head, fall asleep, breathe in all stuff. They die. But to me, that revelation worked, especially for just because this movie's pretty depressing. Also, I mean, this is a very negative, dark, brutal, visceral depiction of hell. And I really enjoy it. I love the surreal nature of it. It definitely played out. It felt like a dream. All the imagery was really creepy. Definitely reminiscent of, Silent Hill. Therefore, even Jacob's Ladder. Hellraiser for sure. Definitely a lot of Fulci type violence and gore and just the way the story's told. I mean, one of the most brutal moments is stylized so well that the fact that we don't see it is still effective. And that's when he takes this stool that the father has to stand on to get into their face. After he stabs him with the key, and we see slow motion, he falls. And then Arda grabs the stool, kind of stands over him, hits him in the head a few times in slow motion. But the camera's like down looking up at him. So we don't see the impact. We just see the buckets of blood splashing on him with each blow. And yeah, the blood was kind of watery or kind of too syrupy. But it's still a bloody, gory film. And I really enjoyed it. Just the idea of these sort of hellion creatures being sewn together. There's a part where the goat head lady just stands at this thing and this weird baby falls out of her, which almost just looks like a kidney bean shaped hairball, like a giant one. Then the helper just runs off with it. But yeah, a really wild, surreal, dark, visceral, brutal film. Probably one of the most frightening yet also somehow realistic portrayals of hell. I really like the ending reveal of it's just this endless loop that these characters are doomed to repeat forever. And all the acting was very well done, especially from the father character who was a first time actor. So another excellent directorial debut. Oh, and I didn't even mention IFC Midnight because of course it is my second favorite, modern film company, especially for horror. Baskin, awesome movie. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.